He often used to spend time wondering about people, and some people he could not understand. He could not understand those who knew of the existence of hell, yet they were not mindful of their sins. He could not understand how this is possible, that a person knows about hellfire and yet he continues to think of sins as petty things. He could not understand those who knew the world as a temporary phase, yet they spent their lifetimes chasing this dunya. He could not understand this idea as well, that how could people, knowing that this dunya will perish, still run after it as if this will last forever. He could not understand those who knew that death will come to each and every single one of us, yet spent most of their time in laughter, play and amusement, forgetting that they too have to go back to their Creator one day and stand before Him. So he had a hard time trying to understand these ideas because he was unlike all of them. He understood the value of all of these things. He understood the value of the dunya as compared to the hereafter. He understood the value of this dunya being a temporary phase for us, and he understood that he has to go back to his Lord one day. Therefore, whenever he had to spend, it was easy for him to spend for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever Allah had given him, he spent it in the way of Allah. From the very beginning, he was a good friend of Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, who was the first Caliph of Islam. And even in the times of Jahiliyyah, he stayed away from alcohol, he never committed zina, and he never worshipped idols. Such was his personality even in the times of Jahiliyyah. Even then he knew right from wrong. He could sense it. At the age of 34, he was already one of the richest men in Arabia. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr approached him and talked to him about accepting Islam. And he said, Uthman, you are a determined person and you are one who is capable of judging between right and wrong. Because Abu Bakr had seen him throughout his life that he was always one who could judge between right and wrong. So he assured him that I know you are a good person and you have this capability to judge between right and wrong. What are these idols that our people worship? What are these idols that our people worship? Are they capable of providing us with what we need? Are they not made of silent stones and they do not hear us nor can they see us? And Sayyidina Uthman acknowledged that yes, I completely agree with you that these idols cannot do us, they cannot cause us any harm or any good. And he asked to meet the Prophet ﷺ. And when the Holy Prophet ﷺ met him, he gave him the promise of Jannah right then and there. He told him that respond to this call of Allah and I promise you Jannah. At that very moment, he had given him the promise of Jannah in the first meeting. And it was easy for Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu to accept Islam then. He was one of the earliest Muslims to embrace Islam. In fact, one of the first 10 to accept Islam. And the moment at that point in time, whenever somebody embraced Islam, there was torture. It meant torture, it meant ill treatment from your friends, family and tribe. And the case of Sayyidina Uthman was no different. His uncle tied up his hands and feet at the age of 34. His uncle tied up his hands and feet and left him and tortured him and said that how could you leave the religion of your fathers and follow that innovator Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what was the reply of this young man? He said, oh uncle, do with me whatever you wish. I will never give up Islam. This was the personality and character of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu. He was very steadfast and firm on the deen. Nothing could move him away from the religion of Islam. He opened and offered himself, do with me whatever you wish, because I will not give up Islam. And today we give up Islam every morning, every evening. We give up Islam for petty issues or petty gains in this dunya. Whether it is in the form of getting a bribe from someone, we give up our religion. whether it is acting against any of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we give up our deen. Whether it is the time of our marriage, we give up our deen for that day. That all year long I have been a good Muslim, but today the decision is with my family. If they want to have free mixing and dancing of men and women, I cannot object to that. I will give up my deen on this day. What if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to take away your life at that very moment? Where would that leave you? So we must do a reflection of our own selves and find out how do we give up our deen so easily when it was so difficult for the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who were tortured physically in ways that are unimaginable for us. Yet they still said we will not give up Islam. And we give up Islam without a problem. In the skip of a heartbeat, it is easy for us to give up Islam. The Prophet ﷺ had great love for Sayyidina Uthman, and he showed it many times throughout his lifetime. And there are various ahadith that show and prove how much the Prophet ﷺ loved him. Sayyidina Uthman had the honor that no man on earth has ever had the honor. He had the honor of marrying two daughters of a Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one after the other. He was first married to Ruqayya bint Muhammad radiyallahu anha, and after he married her and there was persecution going on against the Muslims of Makkah at that time, they migrated, they did hijrah for the sake of Allah to Abyssinia, currently Ethiopia, where they met the Christian emperor Najashi. Later, when they heard that the persecutions had stopped in Makkah and this was a false rumor, they came back to Makkah only to do hijrah again with the Muslims to Medina. So they did hijrah for the sake of Allah twice. And hijrah is again a sign of the mu'mineen, of the muhsineen. When you fear that you are being persecuted and you are not being allowed to practice your religion in its complete entirety, you must do hijrah for the sake of Allah. Because if you die in that state, let's suppose in a non-Muslim country where you are not allowed to practice your religion completely, the angels will not take this as an excuse, the angels of death will not take this as an excuse that I was obligated by these non-Muslims to stay away from Islam. Because they will say to you that was the earth of Allah so small that you could not migrate from one place to the other for the sake of your deen? Because there is nothing more important in your lives than your deen. If you have no deen, you have lost it all. You are unsuccessful in the dunya and the akhirah. So the angels of death will ask you at the time of your death, how could you not migrate to a different place if you could not practice your deen completely in this place? So those who do hijrah, they have a great reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After migration to Medina, Ruqayya radiallahu anha began to suffer from malaria and then later from smallpox. And it was at that time that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had announced that the Muslims now need to march on for the battle of Badr. And Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu was asked by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself to stay back and take care of his daughter while she was ill. And he promised him that you will get the reward of the mujahid who participates in the battle of Badr, and you will get the bounty or the spoils of war of the mujahid who participates in the battle of Badr. So this was a promise assured to Sayyidina Uthman. Though he did not participate in the battle of Badr, he was in Medina taking care of Ruqayya radiallahu anha. And the day that the Muslims returned back from the battle of Badr victoriously, it was the same day that Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu was burying Ruqayya radiallahu anha. So although there was great joy coming from the side of the battle of Badr, but at the same time there was gloom as well, because the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had passed away. And this was indeed a very sad moment for both the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Sayyidina Uthman, who said that I am sad because of the death of my wife, and even more sad that my relationship of being the son-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ has now ended. I had a great relationship with him on a spiritual level, being the Rasul of Allah, but I also had that special place, and people looked at me in a special way because I was a son-in-law of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I'm sad that my relationship with him has broken this day.